Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the public information session on the proposed solid waste development cost charge bylaw for November 3rd, 2025. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Coast Salish nations on whose traditional territory this virtual meeting is taking place. My name is Ben Rutledge, Manager of Solid Waste Services at the Regional District of Nanaimo. Joining me today is Melanie Helmer, Senior Local Government Consultant, Sonam Bajwa, Superintendent, Solid Waste Planning, and Samantha Symes, Special Projects Coordinator, Solid Waste Planning. Next slide, please. This meeting is being recorded. By participating in this meeting, you consent to the collection, use, and disclosure of your personal information shared through this session. This includes, but is not limited to, your image, screen name, and comments. Information collected during this meeting is done so under Section 26C and 26E of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The Regional District of Nanaimo intends to share the meeting recording on the RDN's Get Involved page and YouTube channel for accessibility and transparency. For further information regarding the collection, use, or disclosure of personal information, please contact the RDN Privacy Officer via email at privacyoffice@rdn.bc.ca. Some general housekeeping. Please use the question and answer function to submit your questions. Please do not use the raise hand function. Instead, use the Q&A function. Questions may be submitted during the presentation, and all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Only respectful, appropriate, and on-topic questions will be responded to. Responses to duplicate questions may be combined. RDN Solid Waste Services Overview. RDN Solid Waste Services operates and manages the regional landfill and Church Road transfer station in accordance with provincial and federal regulations. In addition to the operational aspects of these facilities, the regional landfill ensures the functions of environmental and engineering services are provided for landfill construction, management, final closure, and post-closure maintenance. Annually, RDN solid waste facilities process more than 180,000 transactions and manage more than 130,000 tons of material. Since early 2019, the regional landfill has seen landfilled material volumes grow by more than 35% and is projected to landfill approximately 90,000 tons in 2025. RDN Solid Waste Services also manages the contracted curbside collection program, servicing more than 31,000 households weekly. This service has expanded in recent years to include yard waste collection after moving to an automated service in 2019. Operating on a bi-weekly schedule, this service collects organics weekly with alternating garbage and recycling collection. Partnering with Recycle BC, the curbside service has seen consistent growth over the past decade. Solid Waste Services also provides for the solid waste planning functions for the region. The RDN's ambitious 90% waste diversion goal, identified in the 2019 Solid Waste Management Plan, is a continuation of the RDN's longtime commitment to a future of zero waste. Building on existing foundation of waste diversion initiatives, the 2019 Solid Waste Management Plan utilizes two innovative and industry-leading programs, mandatory waste source separation and the waste harbor licensing, to advance waste diversions regionally. By first compelling the separation of materials and then financially incentivizing further diversion, the RDN is moving to develop the circular economy and realize a future of zero waste. Recognizing the fundamental shift that is required to drive diversion to higher levels, RDN Solid Waste Services developed a comprehensive department-wide financial and asset management plan in 2019. Approved by the board in 2019 and again in 2023 when the plan was updated, the Solid Waste Financial and Asset Management Plan acts as a looking glass to predict market conditions while also tracking and accounting for all departmental assets. The plan also contemplates the total available airspace at the regional landfill relative to diversion percentage achieved, population growth, future phase development, and closure of the landfill, as well as the annual tipping fee. Monitored quarterly and updated every 3 years, the Solid Waste Financial and Asset Management Plan has proven to be highly reliable since its development. The plan continues the practice of delivering a user-paid service while also recognizing that higher diversion is a goal that will require a prescribed annual tax requisition to be successful. Excellent. In 2023, the province of BC expanded the scope of services that could utilize development cost charges to include solid waste management and recycling. Supported by the documents listed here, and approved by the regional board, staff have developed a solid waste development cost charge bylaw, which received first reading by the board in October of 2025. We are now seeking public input and look forward to your feedback. It is my pleasure to reintroduce Melanie Helmer, Senior Local Government Consultant, who will be taking us through the rest of the presentation. Melanie?
Thank you, Ben. So we're going to take a look starting with the DCC overview, just to describe a little bit about DCCs generally. We'll look at the proposed solid waste and recycling DCC, and then we'll drill down into the proposed program and rates associated with the bylaw. Then we'll have an opportunity to look at the next steps in the process moving forward. And at the end, we'll be happy to respond to the questions that you have inserted into the Q&A function. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the DCC overview. And as mentioned previously, please feel free to insert questions as we go, if you have any at this time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what are development cost charges? New development places infrastructure burden on local governments, and development cost charges, abbreviated to DCCs, are one-time charges to the developers that help pay the costs of the infrastructure that local governments need to provide in order to support that new development. With DCCs, the infrastructure costs can be fairly shared between developers and the existing property taxpayers. DCCs are set up through a bylaw that has to be approved by the Provincial Inspector of Municipalities and adopted by the Board of the Regional District of Nanaimo. DCCs are collected on the portion of the infrastructure costs that's attributable to that development only. And the costs for the existing users continue to be funded by a combination of property taxation and tipping fees. Next slide, please. So the Regional District of Nanaimo is looking at solid waste DCCs at this time because, as Ben mentioned, there were recent legislative changes added, and solid waste is now an eligible category. It gives the Regional District of Nanaimo a new tool to recover the infrastructure costs associated with new development. Having a DCC program reduces the tax impact to the property taxpayers and provides a clear, consistent, region-wide program for all developers to contribute to the costs created by new development. And the proposed DCC program supports waste initiatives by ensuring sustainable funding is available for the required solid waste and recycling infrastructure. Next slide, please. DCCs are paid by applicants either at the time of subdivision approval for single-family residences or at building permit issuance for all other types of development. They're paid to the local government where you submit your application. So if the DCC program bylaw is adopted, in the case of the solid waste DCCs, that could be the Regional District of Nanaimo, it could be the City of Nanaimo, Parksville, District of Lanceville, or the town of Qualicum Beach. And those funds are then forwarded by the collecting local government to the regional district to be put into the solid waste DCC program. Next slide, please. So the new development cost charges for solid waste have eligible and ineligible categories, which are established by the province. Those that are eligible include solid waste master planning, landfills, transfer stations, recycling depots and processing facilities, and compost facilities. However, curbside collection costs, including your garbage trucks, vehicles, and equipment that are on site at the landfill or at the if there were a recycling facility at the transfer station, those kinds of items are not eligible. Neither is asset management or environmental monitoring. Next slide, please. So now we'll look at the proposed solid waste and recycling DCC, what's involved in the development and the program and policy considerations. Next slide, please. So development cost charges have a timeline or horizon that's used to determine what capital projects can be included in the program and how much money needs to be recovered from it. The solid waste development cost charge program is set for 25 years until 2050 because that's the estimated remaining lifespan of the Nanaimo Regional Landfill. In determining the timeline and building the solid waste DCC program, the provincial legislation and guides and the documentation that Ben presented to you on an earlier slide, as well as staff at the Regional District of Nanaimo and each of the municipalities contributed to the development of this program. Next slide, please. So we're going to take a look at each of these items on an upcoming slide. The overall process is we start by estimating the growth. We determine what the capital costs are. We then determine what the benefit to new development is as opposed to existing users. We determine what assist factor we will put in place, then calculate the DCC rates, and then all of that feeds into the DCC bylaw, which can proceed for consideration and adoption. Next slide, please. Okay, so the population in the Regional District of Nanaimo is projected to increase by 56,561 people by the year 2050. This is based on the conservative growth estimate in the regional growth strategy of 1.1% estimated annual growth. And the residential development is then calculated based on that projected population growth in combination with census data on how many people there are living in each type of residential dwelling unit now, and that is then used to project. Next slide, please. So building on that, we estimate what the new development will look like in terms of residential dwelling units. The first column on this slide is the type of residential dwelling units. It's been divided into single detached and mobile homes and multifamily, which could be anything from, say, a fourplex up to a high-rise building. The second column shows the current number of units. And then the next column is the projected number of new units between now and 2050. With the total 2050 column being the combination of the current and the new units that will occur between now and then. The next column shows what percentage the new units are in relation to the total projected number of units in 2050 by each housing type. And then finally, the last column shows the percent of new development that's projected to occur between now and 20 for single detached and also for all multifamily types. Next slide, please. So moving to the industrial, commercial, institutional development, they're calculated using historical building permit data for the entire region gathered from the Regional District of Nanaimo and the member municipalities, and then projected forward. And they have been compared against the official community plans and the remaining land inventory to ensure that the regional district as a whole has sufficient remaining lands that have been classified as commercial, industrial, and institutional, or permit that type of development to support the projected development for each one. Next slide, please. Okay, so in determining the capital cost, the first thing we had to do was look at all of the capital projects that solid waste is planning between now and 2050, and then go through the list of which of those projects are eligible and which of them are ineligible based on the earlier slides. And you have before you the list of eligible projects. Those projects are in current day dollars, and they have then been adjusted to include contingency, engineering, and contract administration costs to reflect the full costs of each project. Next slide, please. The next step is to determine the benefit to new development. With a DCC program, benefit is shared between the existing users and the new development based on fairness and equity. Everyone in the region receives the benefit of solid waste, and new development places an infrastructure burden on the solid waste service. The benefit calculation is the percentage of population growth to the projected total population for 2050, which is 23.73%. The benefit factor is then adjusted for each capital item to reflect the percentage that's directly attributable to new development versus existing users. Some capital costs only occur because of new development, whereas others will be shared by new and existing users equally, with new development bringing forward the timeline for construction or replacement. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a summary that the benefit to new versus existing users of the solid waste system. Having determined the benefit, this raised the question of who should pay for it. DCCs provide an alternative revenue source to fund solid waste and recycling facilities, infrastructures for the region. They do not bring in extra money, and they do not change the capital costs that are required for the solid waste facilities. They simply change where the money comes from. The primary revenue sources for solid waste and recycling are property taxation and tipping fees. If the RDN board chooses to proceed with the DCCs, the property tax requisition can be reduced in proportion to the revenue raised through the DCCs while still maintaining full cost recovery for the service. The DCCs collected are placed in a specific DCC reserve, and these funds, together with interest earned on them, can only be used for capital projects on the solid waste DCC project list and for no other purpose. The regional board is looking for your input on choosing whether the infrastructure costs for solid waste facilities generated by new development or paid for by the new development through the DCCs or by property taxpayers. Next slide, please. Next, we come to the assist factor. In the name assist factor comes from a requirement that local governments have to provide a level of assistance to new development. An assist factor can be fixed or it can be varied across time. For example, starting at 20% and reducing by 5% per year until you get to 1%. This permits development time to adjust to the change. A key factor on whether to use a set rate or a percentage is the amount of DCCs in relation to the overall cost of construction. Where the percentage of DCCs in relation to total construction is small, the adjustment time is less impactful. Another factor is how much cost in relation to new development is being transferred to existing taxpayers, because it wouldn't be recovered from the DCC program, so it would need to be recovered instead from property taxation. To distribute the DCCs, now that it's been determined how much goes to new users and how much goes to existing users, the solid waste DCC distribution within the program is then, it has to be split down as to who pays how much. And that, in this case, is based on the estimated waste generated by land use sector. So Solid Waste Services tracks the waste that is generated across the region, and using this information, those costs are divided between the projected development across the region, with 39% going to the residential, which includes both the single family and multifamily types, industrial, commercial, and institutional. Next slide, please. So this slide is a little bit small, so I'm just going to walk through it here. The DCC rate calculation now takes all of the previous slides that we've been looking at and combines everything into a calculation to determine how much will be recovered from the DCC and how much is recovered from other sources. You'll see on the left, the start of the slide, that the projects listed here are the same capital projects that we looked at earlier, And column A, cost estimate, is the costing that was listed earlier. The next column after that, benefit factor B, is what the benefit is to new development and to the existing user group. So new development in the case of the septic field is set at the default of 23.73%. In the case of the commercial tip floor, it's 11.86% because the existing users are a large part of the reason why that project will need to be done, and new development is a smaller factor than the default level. Whereas the building expansion is set at 75% because the only reason the building will need to be expanded is because of the increasing demand to process additional solid waste directly attributable to the new development. Then the column after that is the total cost of the capital project multiplied by the benefit factor in column B, and it gives you the amount that we then move forward in our calculation. The next is the assist factor, which is set at 1%, with the requirement that the Regional District of Nanaimo has to contribute something. That is the minimum level it can be set at. The column after that, column E, is taking the total benefit to new development less the assist factor, and it gives you the total amount recoverable for each project, which is a part of the solid waste DCC proposed program. The final column is the amount that will continue to be recovered from property taxation and tipping fees and is not recoverable from the DCC program. Next slide, please. So that moves us down to the point where we look at the draft DCC rates that are included in the bylaw that's received first reading for the solid waste and recycling facilities. Next slide, please. And these are the proposed rates. The single detached and mobile homes are $534.49 per dwelling unit. Multifamily, $423.14 per dwelling unit. Commercial, $25.04 per square meter of gross floor area. Industrial, $22 per square meter of gross floor area, and institutional, $24.31 per square meter of gross floor area. The DCCs will be collected at subdivision for the single detached dwelling and the mobile homes, and building permit for the other types. DCCs will only be collected when the value of the work exceeds $50,000. For building permits associated with residential development, DCCs will also only be collected when the building permit results in one or more new dwelling units. Other residential building permits, such as bathroom renovations or adding a deck, won't increase waste production and therefore do not impose any new capital cost burdens on the Regional District of Nanaimo, so DCCs won't be collected. The proposed DCC's average cost per dwelling unit is relatively low, being approximately 0.15% of the average residential construction cost based on building permit values. The data on existing DCCs for Nanaimo, Landsville, Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and the rural areas of the Regional District of Nanaimo can be found on the Get Involved RDN project page for those who are interested in looking into that. If DCCs are implemented, the property tax requisition plan for solid waste facilities could be reduced by as much as 30% in some of the upcoming years between now and 2050. Next slide, please. In-stream protection. So new DCC rates are proposed to be effective at bylaw adoption, and legislation provides protection for in-stream applications for 12 months. And that applies to building permit applications, subdivision applications, or what are called precursor applications for rezoning or development permits. If you would like to be eligible for that, you need to have your application in. It has to be complete and it has to be submitted before the bylaw is adopted. Then you're granted with a 1-year period from bylaw adoption to finish everything off and to have your permit approved or your subdivision application approved. Next slide, please. Next steps. So we're going to look at moving forward, what's going to happen after this. Next slide, please. So waivers and reductions are a tool available through the Local Government Act, and the Board of the Regional District of Nanaimo will be considering whether to put in place a waiver and reductions bylaw for DCCs. The eligible types of development permitted by legislation can include any one of these 4 items, being not-for-profit rental housing, including supportive living housing, for-profit affordable rental housing, subdivisions of small lots designed to result in low greenhouse gas emissions, and developments designed to result in a low environmental impact. If implemented, DCCs waived or reduced would be recovered from taxes. The RDN is interested in your feedback on whether to consider waivers or reductions for each of these eligible types of development. A survey is available on the Get Involved RDN project page for solid waste development cost charges, and we encourage you to check it out. Any revenue foregone by waiving or reducing DCCs would need to be recovered from property taxation and not from DCCs. This slide outlines a tentative timeline. Work commenced in August of 2024, some of the background preparation and planning. The Solid Waste Management Committee made a recommendation to the board to draft a bylaw in November of last year. The board then passed a resolution to proceed with drafting a bylaw in December of 2024. Subsequently, the board has considered the bylaw at 2 board meetings and 2 committee of the whole meetings. The bylaw initially proposed was revised based on board feedback and received first reading in October of 2025. We're now interested in public input on the bylaw that's being considered. That public input will then be compiled for the board's consideration when they consider second and third reading of the bylaw. Then the bylaw is sent to the Inspector of Municipalities for approval, followed by presentation to the board for adoption, after which the bylaw is implemented and the DCCs start to be collected. Next slide, please. Okay, the review, reporting, and revision of the solid waste DCC bylaw. If adopted, the solid waste DCCs will be monitored and reviewed annually to keep the DCCs current. A bylaw amendment to incorporate a cost of living increase can be completed annually as a minor amendment, and the CPI is used for determining that cost of living amount. When the bylaw is amended, the amount of development cost charges could go up or down as a result. So other opportunities for the public to provide input are listed here. Feedback is being collected on the Regional District of Nanaimo Solid Waste Development Cost Charge page in the Get Involved RDN platform. The link is provided here on the slide. It includes the following opportunities. You can sign up to receive notification of project updates. There are frequently asked questions and answers. There's a survey which is open from now until November 30th of 2025. And there's additional background information on both solid waste DCCs, DCCs generally, and also on the solid waste services. Public input will close on December 15th of 2025. And the feedback that is received will be compiled into a report for the board's consideration. The DCC bylaw may be changed based on the input that is received. Next slide, please. That brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Seeing no questions, we will end the recording now.